Welcome. I'm Hannah Hotchkiss, and I serve this congregation as the Welcome Ministries coordinator. If you're new to us today, thank you for joining us for this online service. We're delighted that you're here and grateful you're spending this time with us in virtual community. During this time of social distancing, please know that there are still ways to connect. Personally, the congregation's online offerings have lifted my spirits tremendously over the past several weeks. Groups have continued to gather for online meditation, spiritual discussions, music gatherings, and pastoral support, and more. If you're new to us and you have questions about Unitarian Universalism, this congregation, or how to get involved, please feel free to join us in the Zoom social time after this service. If you identify yourself as new, the moderator will direct you to the newcomer chat room, where I will be, along with other congregants, to answer your questions. Again, welcome.
Let me add my welcome and thank you for joining us here at First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor. A particular welcome to our virtual visitors from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Petoskey, Michigan, who join as our guests. We welcome you and are honored by your presence. It's good to keep company with you. Next week, we hope you all will join us for an intergenerational a service for all ages celebration of Earth Day, which goes hand in hand with Easter here in our community. And after our service today, we hope you'll join us for Social Hour. You can find details for Social Hour, how to get there, at UUAA.org, our webpage, our homepage, UUAA.org. Our music leaders started us off today with the song Acclamation from Gospel Mass, setting of Hallelujah in honor of our Christian siblings who are celebrating Easter, and many of whom are saying Hallelujah or Alleluia for the first time in many days. This celebration we honor alongside you. We thank you, and we thank you for allowing us to share a bit of company in your celebration of spirit. The Chalice Bells join us a little bit later with some handbell music and our special guest, Sarah Dan Jones, a musician and incomparable artist. And the reason that when we breathe in peace, and when we breathe out love. We thank you for your presence as well and welcome you to the roster, the growing roster of special guests. What a day this is. Today, through story and song, through learning and reflection and silence and singing, we conjure a theme of possibility. We remember again what it might mean to hope. We rest in the period before all of the hubbub and the joyous, raucous exuberance of it finally being over. And we rest right in that period before the gates open up again. We engage possibility like the raindrops when they conspire on the ground, on the sun-scorched earth, and they remind the dust once again of its muddy ways. And the sea, once memory, is now burgeoning with its waters again. The same is true of us, with our dreams and our work, with our will, and with our follow-through. We make ourselves and our lives into community, and we make our community have a difference in the world and in time. Thank you for joining us for this time together. We're glad you're here.
My feet took a walk in heavenly grass all day while the sky shone clear as glass. My feet took a walk in heavenly grass all night while the lonesome stars rolled past. Then my feet come down to walk on earth, and my mother cried when she gave me birth. Now my feet walk far, and my feet walk fast, but they still got an itch for heavenly grass, but they still got an itch for heavenly
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti. I invite you to join me and Reverend Lindasusan Ulrich in jointly lighting our chalice this morning. Lindasusan and I are in different physical locations. We are apart, and yet we are together in the spirit of love that flows strongly and well through our community. We invite you to join us by lighting your own chalice in your home and or joining us in these words which are familiar to many of us. Would you join me? We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Would you join me now as we say together the words of our community's covenant? The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another. May it be so.
This week, many of us are celebrating Easter or Passover. And of course, all of us are celebrating the signs of new life that are springing up in the natural world all around us. But this year, it can feel a little harder for many of us to connect to the sense of joy and possibility that this time represents. And many of us are having to rethink the way we celebrate these holidays. So I want to share a story about a little mole and his mama and she teaches him some important lessons about how to cope with times like these. Little Mole Finds Hope by Glennis Nellist, illustrated by Sally Garland. Little Mole was sad. He lay in his burrow deep underground, and he put his head in his paws. "Little Mole, what's ever wrong?" asked Mama. "I just don't know, Mama," sniffed Little Mole. "But I don't feel good inside. I'm sad." "What you need is hope," Mama said. "Hope? What is hope, and where do I find it?" asked Little Mole. "Come with me," Mama said as she took hold of Little Mole's paw. "Sometimes hope is hiding in the darkness. Sometimes it's hard to see, but it's always there. You just have to find it." Mama led her son gently out of the dark burrow up toward the light. But on their way out of the tunnel, Mama stopped. "Do you see this little bulb, Little Mole?" she said. Mama pointed to a bulb squashed in the dark earth. It was brown, wrinkled, and lifeless. "It's dead, Mama," said Little Mole. "No, my dear," Mama whispered softly. "This bulb is not dead. Sometime soon it will feel the warmth of the sun. It will begin to grow and push its way out of the deep, cold earth. One day this bulb will become a beautiful yellow daffodil. Close your eyes, Little Mole. Can you see it dancing in the wind?" "Yes, Mama," cried Little Mole. "I see it, I see it." "That is hope," Mama said. Little Mole and Mama reached the top of the burrow where the sun was shining. "Look up, Little Mole," Mama said. "What do you see?" Little Mole looked up. He saw woodpeckers sitting in the trees, but the branches were bare. They stretched out like skeleton bones, silhouetted against the sky. "They are dead, Mama," said Little Mole. "No, my dear," Mama whispered. "The trees are not dead. One day soon buds will appear, and these branches will be covered in bright green leaves. Close your eyes, Little Mole. Can you see them dancing in the wind?" "Yes, Mama," cried Little Mole. "I see them, I see them." "That is hope," Mama said. Little Mole and Mama scurried along the edge of the woods until they came to Mr. Rabbit's garden. An old brown flower pot was lying on its side in the soil. Under the rim, something small and shriveled was hanging. "It's dead, Mama," said Little Mole. "No, my dear," whispered Mama softly. "That chrysalis is not dead. One day soon the butterfly growing inside will burst out of her shell. She will spread her wings and fly free among the flowers." "Close your eyes, Little Mole," said Mama. "Can you see her dancing in the wind?" "Yes, Mama," cried Little Mole. "I see her, I see her." "That is hope," Mama said. Little Mole and his Mama went home. "I had a wonderful day today, Mama," Little Mole said happily. "Now I know that there's always hope, even in the darkest places." Mama smiled as she tucked Little Mole into bed, pulled his quilt up under his chin, and kissed him goodnight. And Little Mole closed his eyes and fell fast asleep, dreaming of yellow daffodils, green trees, and beautiful butterflies dancing together in the wind. The end.
This community has been meeting, whether we've had to in small buildings, gotten to in huge buildings with large campuses and sprawling playgrounds, or needed to take care of each other virtually across the air. We have met for over 150 years, keeping company with each other's lives and remembering the importance of building community from our individual lives. It makes a difference in a world of isolation and in a time of distance. that we strengthen and build up the places that are helping keep us together, that are making channels for the streams of love that they may broadly run. And so I invite you to do your part in helping to keep the circle whole with your time, with your treasure, with your giving, with your commitment to be part of who we are. You give us, you give our world, and you give the future generations just that much more of a chance at life more beautiful and more abundant. Your giving matters here, and we thank you for your generosity.
I'm recording this week's meditation from home on Thursday evening, which is what I usually do. But this Thursday is a little bit different. It's a special Thursday being celebrated by Christians around the world as part of Holy Week. And it was on this Thursday that Jesus gathered his disciples together and they celebrated a meal. They celebrated their Passover meal with wine and bread and no doubt conversation and sharing of stories. And at one point, Jesus got up and had a towel and some water, and he started to wash the feet of his disciples. Now, washing someone's feet in this time and country was not particularly unusual. Often a host might offer water to a guest when they came over, or sometimes they would have a servant wash the guest's feet. So this was a sign of hospitality. Now Jesus, who was the revered teacher, was now washing the feet of his own disciples. And he was, I think, demonstrating and modeling, as a good teacher would, what this means. And he said to them that they should be doing this for others in the same way that he was doing it for them. I think this was also for Jesus an act of great love and of great care. He loved his disciples deeply, but he knew that this was the last time he would be with them. This was the last meal that he would share with them. And I think it also is a way of teaching us about taking things for granted, of not knowing what will come next, of who we might be with. And so for us in this time of pandemic, we have been taught to wash our hands in a very specific way. We've been taught not to become complacent about this. In fact, we should be very vigilant, because in this act of washing, this act of love, could very well save someone's life. And so today I ask if you would stay with me, watch, and pray, if that's something you do, or reflect, or simply be in this moment of silence together. Spirit of life and great mystery, give us strength to remain vigilant, even when over time complacency is tempting. remind us that the simple act of careful hand washing is in fact an ultimate gesture of love. Amen.
The reading today comes from the book of Luke in the Christian Scriptures. There was a man named Joseph who was from Arimathea in Judea. Joseph was a good and honest man, and he was eager for God's kingdom to come. He was also a member of the council, but he did not agree with what they had decided. Joseph went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. He took the body down from the cross and wrapped it in fine cloth. Then he put it in a tomb that had been cut out of solid rock and had never been used. It was Friday, and the Sabbath was about to begin. The women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and watched how Jesus' body was placed in the tomb. Then they went to prepare some sweet-smelling spices for his burial. But on the Sabbath they rested, as commanded in the law of Moses. I want to share a few thoughts that I hope will enrich this passage for you and help bring the story alive. So one of the things that catches my attention in this section is that Joseph of Arimathea was a member of the council that condemned Jesus and handed him over to Pontius Pilate to be executed. What must it have been like to sit on that council and not be able to save your beloved teacher? Because once Joseph asked for the body, he'd outed himself as one of Jesus' followers. And this was a huge risk that could have cost him everything, maybe even his life. But grief has a way of showing us what's truly important. Soon after Joseph and the women prepared for the burial, they had to stop because it was Shabbat and working was forbidden. And I imagine his followers sitting in their homes that night and all the next day with little to do except feel the raw pain of Jesus' absence. I imagine their fear at not knowing what would come next, except that somehow they'd keep carrying out the loving vision that he'd taught. That's the heartbreaking future that they were looking at as they headed back to the tomb the next morning.
It's my distinct pleasure to introduce to our community this morning a colleague and a dear friend who has been a leader in our denomination for many, many years, Sarah Dan Jones. She serves as music director at the Starr King Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Plymouth, New Hampshire. She joins us in this morning's service as a special musical guest. Delighted to introduce you to Sarah Dan Jones.
This morning I'm going to sing two hymns for us. Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. The second and third verses are by Eugene Navius, who is an amazing Unitarian Universalist director of religious education and just an inspirational person to so many people. And then we're also going to do The Gift of Love, which was written by Hal Hobson and is in many sacred hymnals. Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing and The Gift of Love. Come Thou Fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing Thy grace, streams of mercy
highest praise, while the hope of life's perfection fills our hearts with love and joy. Teach us ever to be faithful. May we still thy goodness prove. Come thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war be silent. Fill our love glow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come thou fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us find ourselves in union. Help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above. Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire, but have not love, my words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so earth be fair as heaven above.
Take care, friends.
This Sunday marks Easter Sunday for those who find resonance with the Christian tradition, a time of hope and possibility in that faith tradition. It's also for us in the state of Michigan a time of moving ever more deeply into the season of spring, as the weather gets gradually warmer and buds began to sprout, also representing hope and possibility in the cyclical rhythm of life. And I'm very much holding the story that Reverend Lindasusan shared with us, the scriptural passages she shared, that speak to a particular context for the Christian tradition of Easter, one in which the followers and adherents of Jesus' teachings were holding tremendous grief and sorrow at his death. They were holding uncertainty as to the future now that their teacher had died. What would come next? What would happen next? How would they carry on? They were holding perhaps even anger and outrage at the injustice of it all. And yet the story tells us that these same believers, even in the midst of all that uncertainty and loss and anger, found their way to new possibility. It's that sense of possibility that I'd like to invite you into reflection with me on this Sunday. And as we do so, I shared with our community a question earlier in the week. I invited us to share with each other and with me directly those questions that might be on your heart or on your mind in these days. What have you been wondering? What have you been pondering? What are the active questions that you have been wrestling and struggling with? And what emerged out of that was a very rich and nuanced tableau that speaks to how each of us are experiencing this time we're in such different ways, genuinely different ways. There were individuals who wrote to me about the immense feelings that are being navigated right now, feelings and reactions. Some folks, frontline workers in the healthcare profession, writing about the day in, day out traumatic situations that they're having to encounter, the grief and sadness, the loss, the uncertainty that they're even holding for their own health as they're trying to do the right thing and be of support and help to others. Others of us just navigating our day in and day out uncertainty, trying to live life as best as we can, and yet at times being out in public, maybe needing to go to a grocery store or pharmacy and feeling a little bit on high alert. Is there someone near me who might be coughing or sneezing? Is that aisle too crowded? Should I come back to it later? Challenging emotions of fear and uncertainty and sadness ourselves in these days. Times in which we're also needing to delay memorials and our own grieving processes in our families or even collectively. And yet, a time in which we're also encountering the normal rhythms of life that include celebrations and beautiful, happy occasions, the births of children or grandchildren into our families, the celebration of anniversaries of relationships, the birthdays that continue to happen and be honored and celebrated. That whole collage of emotions and feelings, encountering actual acts of bravery and goodness and decency all around us. I saw interviews this week with the Detroit factory workers for GM and Ford who feel such a sense of national commitment and pride. They feel so positive about the ways in which their industries are retooling to support all of us, to support our state and our nation and the broader world. The stories of people in our own community and throughout the country who are making protective masks at home to the best of their ability, however you can, and offering those with a spirit of gentleness and kindness to those who may need it. Others offering to go to the grocery store and bring back groceries and essential supplies to those who may not be able to leave their home without significant risk. Such tremendous acts of kindness and decency occurring all around us, acts of healing love. Even the earth itself, we are learning through the reports that are emerging, our biosphere, our ecospheres, as human activity has lessened and diminished in recent weeks, our biosphere and ecosphere beginning to just heal itself, return to earlier states of greater harmony with less pollution and less activity. Simultaneously, some of you shared with deep passion and commitment your observations about the fault lines that have already been existing in American society and are so painfully apparent right now. The reports out of our county, our Washtenaw County, of how 40+% of hospitalizations are of our African American population, disproportionate, incredibly disproportionate with what the actual population numbers are. That reality of our county being replicated in our state, being replicated throughout our country, bringing up fault lines of racial inequity, who has access to health care, who's being required and expected to work right now. A fault line not just of racial inequity, but also of economic inequity, financial inequity. Who are the folks among us who have to work because if they didn't work, they might not have access to health care. They might not have access to food. Who has to work among us right now because they're being considered essential in a way that our society has never before considered store clerks and cashiers, gas station attendants as essential. And folks in those and so many other professions so selflessly showing up, knowing full well that they are putting themselves at risk by doing so, showing up to be of service to our community. We've seen other fault lines as the reports of domestic violence pour in. How people who have no choice and are told to shelter in place in homes that weren't safe to begin with are now bearing the burden of that and needing to try and figure out what safety looks like, what finding a way to a different type of situation might look like that could actually be safer. These feelings and reactions, these acts of decency and goodness, of kindness and healing, these fault lines throughout our society. So many in our community have spoken to all of these very disparate elements of the time that we are in together. And the complexity is that all of it is reality. All of this is happening at the same time. I find, my heart wants to narrow down, narrow its focus. What I can bring my attention to, what I can bring my energy to, what I can fully, deeply, and well focus on is limited right now out of necessity. Some of the energies around us are very intense, very, very intense, and capacity is constrained. And the energy that the world might need from me and might need from you is finite right now. This is part of the reality also that we are each navigating right now, even as we can see and know the full breadth of complexity of what is happening around us, what we can bring to bear, who we can care for day to day, what we can hold in our heart and be present to, is narrowed right now. It may not be the same breadth of focus we might have been able to bring a month or 2 months ago. I've noticed in the sharings that have come my way, alongside the narrowing of what we can bring our care and love and attention to right now, many of you shared very subtle wonderings, but powerful, subtle wonderings. I wonder, I'm experiencing such grief and sorrow, such pain around the uncertainty of all of this. Isn't that what other people are feeling too? I don't understand why people are posting cute pictures of animals right now, when what I feel is this overwhelming sadness. Others of us who are doers, acting and doing what we can to make a positive difference in such a beautiful and loving way, and the very subtle wondering around that too. I wonder, why can't others do this? I'll help. I could teach others how to sew masks or do what kindness and goodness is possible right now. I can help and support others in that. Are there others? Where are those others? The subtle wondering of that. The subtle wondering around the fault lines and the injustices that are increasingly becoming apparent. I'm feeling this outrage, this anger. Where are the other folks in our community who are outraged and angry at these fault lines that are appearing, at the societal, the systemic violence, at the inequity around who has access to healthcare right now and who doesn't, who's expected to work, who can shelter at place and who doesn't even have the option of sheltering in place right now. The subtle wondering of where are the others that might be holding the same energy that I'm holding, even as our ability to engage is less than what it might typically or normally be. Amidst all of those wonderings, all of those realities, what is grounding us? What is centering us? What is rooting us in this time? We often say, I'm going to go very high level for a moment, but when we think of how any organization, any system we belong to, is dedicating itself, we say, look to how money and time are being spent. People say that a budget often reflects values. They do reflect values. And also time, what people are giving their time to, tells you what an organization is truly committed to, what it has the capacity to do. In a similar way, bring that down to an individual level. Bring it down to just you, just me. In the narrowing of what I can focus on, I come back over and over again to my personal, deep and profound commitment to love and care for other human beings. The sadness and grief at seeing other people suffer, at knowing the pain that they're going through. Underneath the sadness and the pain is love. The anger, the frustration, the outrage at seeing these fault lines in our society, fault lines that have been there all along and are so acutely exacerbated in this time. Underneath the anger and the frustration is a profound sense of commitment to caring for the welfare and the well-being of every person. I find the word hope can be complicated. It's often linguistically used as a synonym for expectation. I hope that something will happen. I am expecting that something will happen. Linguistically, we also use it as a way to talk about something intangible. I hope that something will happen, but I don't know who's going to make it happen. I don't know if I have a role in making it happen. I hope that something will happen. I have no interest in those kinds of hope. Hope without any assignment. And so instead of using the word hope, I often use the word possibility. Where is the human possibility? And for me, it's a very humanistic concept of possibility. Each of us having full agency to dig beneath what may present itself at the surface The fear, underneath the fear of loss, is profound love for those nearest and dearest to me. Underneath the sadness is the caring that I feel for those who might be suffering right now. Underneath the anger and the outrage at injustice and inequity, a profound commitment, a loving commitment to human equity, human dignity. Digging below what presents itself, we can find our core commitments that endure, that are exactly what is needed right now from each of us. We have the possibility of recognizing the depth of love that resides inside each and every one of our hearts. It is there. It is calling to each and every one of us right now. This is the profound sense of possibility that these times need from us. I invite you in the days ahead, in the season that we are in, that we continue to move through together, to find your way, even as we navigate the surface feelings and the doing and the being, all of that presents itself, all of that tremendous complexity that continues and will continue for a time still to present itself to us with this level of intensity. Underneath it, notice the ground of love that calls to you, that whispers gently to you, that invites you into relationship with it. Trust that part of yourself, for that is the best of who you are, and that is what the world needs from us right now. May this be a beautiful and blessed spring season, blessed Easter for you and your family.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know, 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 I know. I know, 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 I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul will unfurl my soul will unfurl its wings.
As we move forward into the week ahead, may we find moments when we can return again to that core of love within us and to the possibilities that surround us. Happy Easter, happy Passover, happy spring, and blessed be.